I press start recording, and that means that we're recording a live thing, except that it isn't live, except that it's sort of live because we're both obviously alive humans. But yeah, I don't know how to do a soft start on pre-records. I've yet to work it out. Everyone, hello, welcome to Rail Natter, sort of, except it'll be tomorrow night because it's Tuesday night. This is going out live tomorrow night, but it's tonight, obviously, because obviously we're live, right? Bonnie is here. Bonnie Price is here, everyone.
Hello, thank you for having me.
That's all right. Wait a minute. I'm going to press this button here. Hello, Bonnie is here. We're waving. Oh, you've got the hat. Right, I'm going to get the hat on.
I've got my hat.
Here we
I
are.
came prepared. It even lights up. Hang on.
Oh, do the light up. Excellent. Oh,
My own little disco. Doesn't matter that I'm stuck in tier 4.
very. Oh my goodness. Yeah, don't. Thanks, Bozza. So right, what are your Christmassy effects that you have? I have a single mince pie.
Well, I've not done one of your rail natters before, and I was a little bit nervous, so I thought I'd come really prepared.
That's excellent preparation because, funnily enough,
And halfway through, when
oh
I'm a
yeah,
little bit too tipsy, I've got mince pies ready to sort of bring me back to the sober edge.
bring that's
That's the
it
plan.
back from the brink. Yeah, good plan. I do actually have a box of mince pies over here ready to get involved with. I've only got one glass of Bailey's. I'm following you. Normally I drink. I'm basically an old. I don't want to stereotype here, but I'm about to horribly stereotype. I'm a bit of an old woman, and I quite enjoy drinking sherry at Christmas. I'm a big sherry fan. Uh,
So, yeah, I agree with you there. Like, I'll drink like amaretto or Bailey's neat, and I'm quite happy.
that's just you sorted. Like just
It's,
absolute. Yeah, yeah.
it's
Um,
evidently actually a Victorian woman who's just like time travelled, obviously.
Yeah, I'm all over the sherry, so I will just sit and drink sherry like there's no tomorrow. In fact, I was at a Christmas party yeah, in 2019. I was at a Christmas party where I went through a bottle and a bit of sherry, and actually, I don't know. I think because it's quite sticky, you slow down a bit, so it just keeps me on the brink of like a pint and three quarters tipsy. Like night, which for
Wow.
me is like I don't take.
Yeah.
I'm a lightweight, so for me, I'm an easy drunk. But yeah. Oh, I miss the sherry, so I need to get some sherry in.
It sounds
Absolutely.
like if you can't go to a work Christmas party this year, your work owe you a bottle of sherry. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, well, my employer gave me a gift card this year, so maybe I just need to absolutely blend that on sherry. Yeah,
It sounds like it's the only responsible thing to do.
absolutely is.
You've
So
got to be going.
yeah. Oh my goodness! Right, well, we've been recording for 2 minutes and 41 seconds as I said that, and already we've gone off track horrendously. We've totally forgotten what we're talking about. We're just talking about booze. Tremendous. This is what it's all about, everyone. So it's Christmas Eve for everyone who's watching. Well, hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, hello. This will go out in a sort of a weird way where it kind of is a bit like it is live, and everyone sort of chats away, which is nice because that's one of the nice things about Rail Natter is we've got lots of people who watch regularly, and they all say hello to each other in the chat when it starts. It's very nice.
So
I'm gonna have a sip of Bailey's.
hope everybody's been good.
Oh, yeah. Well, everyone's even more stuck at home than they thought they would be. But if we'd recorded this when I'd originally planned to, before all of my tech broke, sorry, we would have not known what the lockdown situation would be. Whereas now we know that it's really dreadful. So we're going to pretend that's not happening. In any case, let's do this thing. So
Exactly.
exactly right. No, click that button, and then so tonight we're talking about what the railways get up to at Christmas. Well, kind of. We're going to talk about what the railways get up to at Christmas when they're not running any trains. Because every year, a huge, like thousands and thousands of railway people go out and do things. And I thought we'd talk about, well, not even what all of them are doing, but what our experience, what Bonnie and my experience of people doing things at Christmas on the railways is. Yeah, and so we're going to start with this. Before we crank into the intro, obviously there's no news because it's a pre-record and we don't want to think about the news. We just want to think about Christmassy things. Is this little news snippet that Dr. David Turner, friend of the show, tweeted actually back on kind of a couple of weeks ago, which is an excerpt from 1982, which is the first year where trains didn't run on Christmas Day and Boxing Day. Because in 1981 they had done, and then 1982 they hadn't, and then they have not since. So I think it's quite interesting. This tiny little snippet from a news from the Liverpool Echo actually in December 1982. This little excerpt.
I suspect perhaps that's sort of one part infrastructure needing a good solid chunk to get that upgrades and everything else done. But I suspect also that's probably a shift in terms of union organisation and things like that. So I suspect it's probably the collision of both of those sort of needs from the railway coming together in terms of the people on it needing a break, but
Yeah.
also in terms of the opportunity from the construction engineering side needing that decent chunk of time again.
That's very interesting because there was some postulation under this tweet as to why particularly that was the year, and there was some discussion about there were some people mentioning unions, but there was some discussion about the fact that it felt like at that point there was actually it was stopped because there was a very small amount of use which didn't justify people going to work, actually running trains that day. And so there's a bit of it. So it's not entirely clear. So actually, that's very interesting. I hadn't really thought about the union side of it, but that does sound right. This kind of just the right happenstance of union activity to sufficient to say actually, come on, people need to have a day off or a couple of days off. That's interesting. Well, this is why we have Bonnie on, folks, is because some insights like that, and this is just the start of things. So
I'm in a union as well. I'm in RMT Young Members, so just got to represent them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm a shoddy scab because, well, not a scab, but I'm not in a union. Despite the fact that I'm a strongly socialist person, I'm not actually in a union. I need to join. Wait a minute, which is the one that I'm supposed to? It's not ASLEF. It's the white collar one. Oh,
That's also a little bit of a misconception, though. You can join whichever transportation union you want to. That's not necessarily I must join this union because I do this white collar work, etc. Like, which is what I thought originally before I joined the union. But you can join whichever transport union you want. It's just that other ones might have a better
more tailored to your.
Exactly, yeah. The reason I joined RMT is because they had a young members division that reached out to me. I didn't actually know any of them had young members divisions.
Interesting. Oh, this episode's good already. I'm loving this. Bonnie, we'll need to get you back on to talk about what or generally just have a discussion about what the kind of the young union members group within RMT does, because we haven't really talked enough about unions and the. So I sometimes get irksome about the structure of the railways and how a lot of groups, including the unions, are all vying for power at the moment, and sometimes everyone forgets about customers. So as a socialist, I'm not union bashing for the sake of it, but I just mean everyone gets. But actually, I've not really dedicated any time to talk about the positive stuff that unions do today, partly because not being a young union member, I've not really got involved in that side of things. So that's a gap. Right, future Rail Natter theme booked in already, everyone. You heard it here first. Oh, I'm excited. This is already a cracking episode. I'm going to have a bite of mince pie just to cheer myself. Right,
to the sober edge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think perhaps I've only been involved in the Young Members Union for a couple of months, but there's definitely, some other people. If you wanted to do sort of a 2 or 3 person interview for that would be a good laugh.
That'd be awesome, yeah.
And take a sip every time we mention the government.
Yeah, I've not done a good drinking game Rail Natter episode, but I think once I work out the technology to have multiple people on a Rail Natter, which I will freely admit I have not yet, once I work that out, actually, the fix that I've done to get this tech to work for yourself, for this episode, having fixed the tech, this might mean that I can do it now, actually.
Yeah.
There needs to then be a drinking episode of Rail Natter. That'll probably be entertaining for everyone involved, rather than just sort of a dismal listening experience. In any case, we'll find the only way to find out is to test and stretch the format to its limits. I found this so far.
Volunteer for that one.
So we are going to talk about Christmas and what the railways do at Christmas, and without further ado, and also giving us a chance to sip our Baileys, I'm going to hit the button and make the intro video happen. So welcome to. I broke it already. Wait a minute. There's going to be. Wait a minute. I've got a test card with tone when I break it. Wait a minute. Watch this. I know, right? It's also a very loud beep that neither of us have experienced, but it's a horrendously loud beep because it's a proper test card with a beep. In any case, I see. This is me getting overexcited and thinking I have and have not clicked inappropriate things. And right now, I'm going to be ready to click. Oh my goodness, it's happening already. Right, okay, I'm now going to do it. The thing is, all this is going to stay in because editing, and also people absolutely love it when I break the format.
Oh no, but that's better. I hate boring videos where they're too slick and people seem like robots. Ugh.
There is no risk of that happening on this channel. Without further ado, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter! the lovely in-city 225 fades out, and we've got the lovely snow and the jingle bells. Oh, yeah, this will be the first episode where people experience the snow and jingle bells, actually. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Let's go back to us side by side. Oh my goodness, what an absolutely unprofessional last 3 minutes of show that was. No, it's perfect. I'm loving this. This weird thing that everyone started, that I don't really know why. Now, the people on the there's a Railnatter Discord server. Don't know what that is, but I'm in it. But the people have started a bingo. So they have a bingo where I say things, and then they get points for the things that I say every episode. So there are things that I say every episode because my brain is actually a very limited capacity, and I have about 600 phrases, and I just jingle them up every episode. One of them is I moan about how unprofessional a show it is, or I sarcastically say it's a very professional show. One of those is a bingo tick. So whoever's created the bingo, you're going to have to create new ones, because I'm starting to work out the ones that are on the bingo list now. In any case.
Like we've got a duty to throw in some really weird vocabulary.
Some really like right in from a strange angle sort of stuff, yeah.
Part of me wants to compare trains to a pterodactyl, just because no one will have that.
Yeah, like really niche ornithological references just from left field. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's good. Yeah, or we could start referring to things all in like cost speak, and see and just really. No, in fact, let's not do that at all. No, talking of which, Bonnie, it's time. It's time you told the people who you are, because we've had you on. I've stated you as a railway and utility project manager, but I think that rather undersells you. So let's whiz back to the pictures and get our little faces up. Here we are. We're up in the top corner. This is a nice selfie with you masked up. Tell us all about yourself, Bonnie.
So I came to the railway. So I'm 26 at the moment. I came to the railway after quitting halfway through a marine biology and ecology degree down in Cornwall. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. I quit uni and I was like, yeah, uni's not for me. Let's get out of this before I get myself in any more debt. And I got the first job I could find, which was a admin assistant, and it was a temporary contract for a company called Freedom Connections. They've since been bought out by NG Bailey. And I started there as a temporary admin assistant. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm happy to say that now, because I think it was pretty obvious at the time. But I made a good cup of tea, and I filed papers quite well, and I was quite interested. And then, people in the project team at the time, there was different contractors that came and went, and I sort of ended up covering for various roles, like the commercial manager. So on my train ride home from my first big grown-up job, I would have excerpts of our NEC Option A contract with our client at the time.
Oh my goodness.
Reading it on the Met line home, looking like the world's most boring woman ever. And so then that was sort of how I ended up sort of growing into that job. And it turned out, actually, I really liked engineering and utility work and railway work. I was really interested in it, and I had no idea, because that was never something that was put to me when I was younger, that was something I could have possibly enjoyed. I mean, I picked marine biology and ecology at university because by the time it was time to pick what I was going to do at university, I just finished a box set of Blue Planet. I literally had that little idea. That's not even. I'd love to tell you that was a funny story just for this, but it really isn't. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and it's not for lack
of. And Sophie, it's such an unfair thing. I was one of the few people, arguably one of the weirdos, who did kind of have an idea of what I do, but I don't think it's unreasonable up until the age of, frankly, like into your early 20s, but particularly at the age of like 18, making long-term career decisions. Like that's. Yeah.
So, I mean, I do wonder perhaps if engineering, construction, and railway had been put to me when I was younger, would I have picked it? I don't know, but I'm very lucky now to have sort of fallen into an industry that I really enjoy, because obviously not everybody goes to work and enjoys their job, which to me is just so alien to go, oh, it's just a job. Whereas I couldn't live like that, to be honest. But I'm glad I don't have to.
You and me both. Like, when you live and breathe something, I mean, it has its advantages and its disadvantages in that it means that when we're having a hard time, it really impacts when work is a bit rubbish, it really impacts everything. We can't necessarily put it to bed. But Absolutely. It does mean that with the highs as well, it's definitely, overall, definitely, I prefer that. For me, anyway, and it sounds like for you, we both prefer it that way, where we live it and love it.
For sure. So this picture Was taken on the first day of my current job that I only got a few months ago as a scheme project manager for the Euston, for redevelopment of Euston Conventional Station for Network Rail. So that was my first day on site, hence why I've got a mask on, because obviously coronavirus, all that good stuff. We could probably move to the next picture now.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's cool.
So, oh nice, yeah.
And then that was my first day when I finally got all my tech a couple of days late because of the wonders of IT. Because at any big company or even small company, IT is generally the bane of your life. So yeah, that was my first day from home, getting to know the team and everything else.
I know, right? Yeah, for
Really weird experience because it was just towards the end of the first big lockdown, so at the end of July, and it was very strange.
so I must remember to audio describe all my images because a lot of people listen to this as a podcast without the slides. Why they do this, I don't know, but quite a sizable number do. So here we have this is presumably your lockdown setup, right?
This is
so
up the high tech.
high tech, yeah. So we have a fan, we have 2 bottles of water, and a casually hidden 7-Up. There, is it in the background?
It is. Well, there's. Okay, oh, that's very good spotting of you. So I've got a can of 7-Up, a still water, and a fizzy lemon and lime water because I was very nervous to meet my team and couldn't decide what I might want. And a fan in case I started going red and blushy and shy.
You've got the fan. You've got that's so forward thinking. Yeah, that's such
support plant.
yeah. The plant there is clearly surprising. So you've got a nice little sort of non-iPad sort of touchpad thing, and then the laptop like a little netbook by the looks of it behind it.
Yeah.
Plus the network rail. Welcome to your new Windows 10 device, sort of mouse pad with all your info on it.
All joys.
Oh yeah, and then you've got the pen and the notebook. You've also got the headset as well, by the look of it. Oh no, it's not a headset. That's a docking station.
Yeah, it's a port set so that you can plug it into various screens that have never arrived.
No. Oh dear.
Super useful.
And then is that a work phone as well, or is that your mobile?
That's a work phone as well.
So you really have laid out the whole kit. It's quite good. Yeah.
Well, I was very nervous on my first day because obviously I'm used to going in, getting to know everyone, and I'm quite deaf, and normally I lip read, so I really respond on lip reading and body language normally. So not being able to do that and meeting a whole new team was it was more nerve-wracking than I originally thought when I changed jobs during lockdown. Like I thought, oh, I'd be fine. It was fun.
It's a humorous but also a serious point in that briefly thinking about lockdown, given that engineering is very much a team sport, right? A lot of people, but even beyond beyond engineering, lockdown and working in these conditions for people for any neurodiverse people with various sort of differences in the way that they perceive the world, differences in the way that they socialize, the way that they interact with others. It's really challenging really radically challenging.
Absolutely. My biggest bane is when other people's internet connection isn't quite right, and it throws their audio and visual off. So it means I can't lip read from their screen what they're saying. So then obviously, the auto captions are as good as they can be, but sometimes it's so frustrating. It's not their fault, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely one of those things that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration when lockdown happened, the differences that a lot of people have had that they wouldn't have even thought to bring up. Like I didn't think to bring up with my employer that I have to lip read because it's something that's so natural to me. But now everybody's wearing masks. I'm like,
Yeah, and I'm conscious that we're having a recording where you seem to be having it, where for some reason my tech is still not quite perfect in that you're getting a delay of about 1.5 seconds from my audio to my face. So it's not like I've exactly set this up particularly well either.
Oh, no, but you had no idea of knowing. It's only my screen that's doing that, by the way. It's not yours that's doing that.
No, and the recording's fine. It's just there seems to be a bit of a delay. Yeah, I trialed this and it seemed to be working, so I'm not quite sure. I still need to fix the tech properly. I shall the wizards on Discord will I'll interact with them and get it all fixed up. They'll sort me out.
This is as loud as it goes my end on my laptop, so I can hear you fine.
It is clear though.
I'm deaf, so
yeah. So long as you can hear me nice and clearly, that's hopefully a good thing. Anyway, I shall do my best not to mumble.
That's all right. I'll always say, pardon, what?
Yeah, pardon what works. Yeah. So, So that was your setup, which is a good setup actually, although kind of indicative of how so many people are working, which is off of generally quite small coffee tables in and around their accommodation, wherever they can find a space to put it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a house of seven, so I'm working in my bedroom. I don't have a swanky home office,
Oh yeah,
so
we've
that's my chest of drawers next to my bed.
yeah. Must put out a mention to the housemates who you've turfed out of their living space for tonight's episode. Which actually, let's go side by side briefly, so you can show just how glorious the background is. What a tree, lights,
I
the
mean,
works.
my housemate even made a homemade Christmas wreath, which I have to show you.
Oh, you must show
Bless
us. You
her.
must.
Hang on, let's. Can you see
Oh, it's
that?
lovely. It's lovely. Look at
See,
that.
lit candles and
Bit
everything.
of lit candles, bit of snow. That Bailey's in the wine glass is really that's excellent. Yeah.
Well, I could have poured it in a little glass, but then I just have to keep repouring them. So I thought the most efficient thing to do
It's go
was
for
to
the
just
big.
pour in a larger glass. And I feel like if any year we all deserve Baileys in a large glass to be a large Baileys, it would be this year.
It's 2020. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep. Yep.
2020, the year of the wino.
The year of the alcoholics. Yes.
Yeah.
So, new job and never great. So the next image.
Yep.
Tell us what's going on here. So this, in fact, you describe what this image is, and then tell us about it.
Okay, so this is a GIF that I didn't realize my phone could make, which is why I was really happy with it and kept it forever, because I am technologically completely incompetent. So this is the job that I was on before I went to Network Rail. This is the escalator shaft at Farringdon before the cladding and everything else was finished. So this is at Farringdon Crossrail. So I was working for the London Underground Crossrail team, and I was on the project team for Farringdon, Whitechapel, and Tottenham Court Road.
Ah, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
This is way back in the day when I very first started, April 2018, and this was I think one of the first site tours I went on was Farringdon, and this was one of the gifts that my phone took automatically, and I was quite happy with the shot and how it all looked, and thought it was quite pretty, so I kept it.
It is nice. Yeah. So pretty early on, you were. So how many years had you been in the industry by the time you came onto onto Farringdon as a kind of working at Farringdon?
4 or 5, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just, I mean, okay, 4 or 5 years is quite well, but fairly early on, you were working on quite substantial projects and some pretty hefty engineering.
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate in the projects that I've been on. I mean, when I worked for the London Underground Crossrail team, I was going through a consultancy at the time called CPC Project Services. So I've normally always been consultancy based for that very reason. I think you get a lot more exposure to better and more different projects. It's not like you stay somewhere for 3 months and then quit because you're not very good. It's a good chance to have exposure to different projects in a planned manner.
Yeah.
That's why, like, anyone sort of starting out in their career, I often do say, yes, the big companies are great and their grad schemes are great, but also don't look away from the consultancies and stuff. It depends on what you're wanting in your career, and if you want to work on those larger projects, the route of consultancies and agencies can be a really good one.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of Sorry, go on.
No, I just think you've just got to make it work for you in terms of what it is you're hoping to achieve and get out of that first sort of stint in your career, sort of thing.
Yeah. There are definitely and it's not something I've explored much as kind of as a career path to explain to people. But quite a lot of my Twitter railway engineering friends work for some of the small consultancies, some of the small management, the project management, railway focused project management consultancies. So friends working on things like projects like Coventry Station. Yeah, and sort of other bits and pieces where they're not working for the Atkins or the ACOM or the Arup. They're working for some of the smaller, sort of often focused on project management. Actually, often they're kind of working on some of the kind of the project guidance kind of elements of the project. Some of these smaller consultancies, as well as feeding in as a sort of the engineering management skills as well. Our industry is a complicated one. It's difficult to explain that there's quite a texture of different large and small organisations, consultancies and contractors. For the benefit of everyone listening, generally we refer to consultancies as being the what's the best way to describe? Well, the contractors are the ones who build. The consultants are the ones who direct how to build, whether that's in design or management, and then the client is the network rail or whoever sort of ultimately then owns the stuff afterwards. For anyone who's not sure of when we used client, contractor, consultant, does that match with would you broadly agree with those definitions, Bonnie?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the only one that's missing there is you do get people who are classed as freelancers who for themselves as their own limited company and will freelance either into the client, into a consultancy or into a contractor
Yep.
who just work for themselves and are generally sort of, lack of a better word, but mercenary in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. 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 Who are confusingly referred to as contractors, but aren't necessarily
Yes.
contractors, just to confuse
No.
everything. Yeah. Indeed. So that this mesmerizing GIF has got everyone kind of dancing around their rooms now. There's some sort of strange subliminal messaging hypnosis going on, but it's quite
There
pretty.
is.
So the next image, oh, this is lovely. This is
Yeah.
a lovely big purple roundel and some people looking quite pleased to be next to it. Tell us, Bonnie, what's going on here?
So this was during the Whitechapel Family and Friends Day for staff to bring family and friends to come and look at their work that they've done. And I bought my family because I have no friends. No, I'm joking. Um, see, we're half a glass of Bailey's in and we're already getting deep.
This is it.
No.
Yeah, I know, right?
So obviously, the gentleman in the middle is my grandfather. His name's Barry. And then the two little boys either side of him. On the left is Archie and on the right is Alfie. They're both my brothers. They're twins, believe it or not.
Ah,
Uh, and they are mad about building sites, about any kind of diggers, any kind of machinery or demolition. So, like every year, I get them like big Tonka trucks and other crazy stuff for Christmas. And they wanted to wear my site stuff to go and look at the building site and look at everything. So it was really nice to be able to show them round, obviously, what I do. Because when they were much smaller, they're only 10 now, but when they were much smaller, I couldn't really explain my job to them. They
yeah,
thought I drove trains. And I was like, you know what? Year four, that's good enough.
yeah,
But now
yeah,
they're
yeah,
a bit older, I can explain to them that I don't, in fact, drive trains. I build the things that the trains go through.
yeah, yeah.
So that was good for them to be able to come and see. And it was, it's a bit cheesy, but I was really proud to be able to show my family what I do. There's sort of an ongoing joke with some of my friends and family that I'm like Chandler in Friends. Like everybody knows I've got a job, but nobody's really sure on what I do. They just know that it's sometimes important and I sometimes have to work weekends, but they don't really get it.
Oh, shout out to Barry, Alfie, and Archie. Enjoying the site visit there. That's lovely. It's really lovely.
Yeah, so we can probably move on to the next image.
Yeah. So, and also I'll get our little faces back because I made our faces go away because we were blocking up your family. So, right now here is an image and a half. In fact, we can flick between our faces being on and off to show Euston Tower there. There's Euston Tower in the background. There we are. So our faces are back, and there's a massive picture of an overhead picture of Euston Station with quite. I mean, firstly, it shows how Euston Station is. I have mixed feelings on Euston Station. I quite like the modernist element of the design. It originally quite spacious, but from outside, particularly given the need for like lots of the postal deliveries happened on top. So the actual
Yeah,
top of the building, the view of the building from further away, is a bit ugly compared to its rather more fetching brothers and sisters of St Pancras and King's Cross a little bit further up Euston Road. But
definitely.
it's a functional station. But tell us what's going on here and why are you in charge of it?
I definitely have to make a note there that I am not remotely in charge before my boss rings me after
Yeah,
seeing this.
that's it. Yeah,
I am like way down in the tiny cogs there, so let's not, I don't want to get any lip off of my team that I work with. So Euston, obviously, it's not a secret that it's a very overcrowded station. That's not a secret to anyone. Its operating capacity versus how many passengers use it is insane. And, for a long time before I joined Network Rail, I would avoid using Euston. I used to find it very stressful because of just the amount of people there versus actual space and space to wait for a train in terms of waiting on concourses and things like that. So obviously the station project, well, the project that I'm on is sort of the counterpart to HS2. So obviously HS2 are doing their thing, which is what we can see at the bottom of this image, where obviously they're digging out and everything else along the cut line. But what I'm doing if you can just mark out that in red for me, perfect, thank you. So
blue,
what
blue. It's HS2 bit blue.
Oh,
Blue.
HS2 is blue. I apologise. You're right. HS2 is blue. And then if we do Rex in orange for the top half of the station, as it were,
Yeah, this bit here.
and then
Where's the cut line actually? Which bit? Where's the boundary of whose is whose?
so
Is it where the
I'm
fence is?
I'm not able to draw on it, am I?
No. There's
No.
some blue boxes. There's some. There's the whole road on the HS2 side.
Yeah, it's a little further over, but for all intents and purposes,
It's kind of
you're pretty
between
much
these
there.
two. Yeah,
You're
this
pretty
is
much
roughly there. That's fine. Yeah, roughly there.
And so obviously the Rex project, which is what I'm on, which is the redevelopment of Euston Conventional Station, is looking at sort of the other side of Euston Station's concourse and platforms in terms of how we can modernise it and get better space out of that. And, you know, hopefully by the end of it, we'll pull off a bit of a King's Cross. It'll be far more passenger friendly. It will be far more user friendly also for the type of passengers we have. You know, I mean, it's not a secret that you know, the ramps at Euston are not the friendliest for passengers of reduced mobility, for people having, you know, prams and things like that, and lots of heavy luggage. And having things like the sleeper trains and the long distance services means that, you know, it's not the same as London Bridge, where you have more of a commuter based following for that station. It's a very complex station in terms of just what your end user needs. So in terms of what kind of passengers we have, and, you know, how long are they going to be at that station for? Are they going to want to have lunch? Are they going to want to expect more from that station because of the types of journeys they're making? And that, from that design perspective now, which is the part of the project that I'm working on, makes that really challenging, because it isn't just people who want to turn up and have a pastry and a coffee and go. It's people who might want to actually have a full proper dinner because they've been on a train for 5 hours.
Yeah. Or they're about to be on a train, you know, or they're about to hop on the
Exactly.
sleeper for hours and hours. Yeah. I was going to say, of all the station termini, you know, of all the terminal stations rather in London, this is possibly the one with the widest use case because of the sleeper train.
Absolutely.
It potentially has the big, because it's a very heavily used commuter station. Plus, obviously, it's also, if you like, kind of the flagship way up to Scotland, you know, Manchester and up to Glasgow. Plus sleeper train, plus everything in between. It really is. So yeah, very challenging.
The only thing it's missing is an international, and then it would have everything.
Yeah.
In that campus, as it were. That's the only thing it's missing.
Yeah. It's so a huge amount of work going on, and a very challenging, constrained site, as with any London major kind of upgrade work.
Yeah. I mean, so part of my job is obviously looking at the design, and the other part of it is looking at sort of the concept of operations in terms of, okay, how does this station operate as is? And then during the different design options that we have, how could the station operate with the least amount of impact to passengers potentially during construction? And then what do we want that to look like at end state? What is the best, most efficient thing we can squeeze out at the end of this for our station staff to ensure that, you know, they have a better place to work, for the passengers ensuring that they actually get the station they need and want, rather than what, you know, someone thinks, oh, this might look nice, but actually, is this what we need? So that concept of operations in terms of ensuring that we don't have a shortfall is really critical at the moment, and that's sort of what I'm focusing on with my job role at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, yeah, an unenviably complicated challenge, but an interesting one, I'd imagine. It's the sort of one that keeps you excited. So
the reason I took this job was because it was so mind-bending. So I've only ever worked on the physical delivery of the station once the design is already there. So that's why, you know, when I interviewed for this job, I really wanted this job, because it had everything that my CV was missing.
Yeah.
And, you know, one really good example of why, you know, Euston's quite challenging is that it creates the most waste compared to any other station because of the types of journeys it has.
Interesting.
So, you know, for example, we can't just move around the bin storage, just as an example, because there is so much waste that if it isn't dealt with, the station stops.
Yeah.
And that's not an option.
Yeah.
So don't stop the railway. So it's little things like that you just wouldn't necessarily put so much umbrage on when you're doing that planning and design, but when you really look at it as a whole, you absolutely have to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and that doesn't even think about the interface with HS2.
Yeah.
Well, with all of the utilities, the groundworks, the geotechnical stuff, it's for such a, I say small site. I don't mean small as in terms of complication, but small in terms of footprint.
Yeah,
There is so much going on. It is crazy.
it's incredible, and it's so important for. I mean, ultimately, and this is as true for the kind of the plain line railway infrastructure, if you like. You know, the stuff that's away from the stations as it is for the stations. The railway isn't the railway without without the operations side of it. You have to
No.
think about the operations, and so just like planning the overall network shape of a railway, you just the same. You have to think about the operations of the station, the flow of passengers, the flow of staff. Where does staff rest? Where's the interaction? Where's the driver facilities? And way all these things, and it's
And
yeah, it's
how do they
fascinating.
get to their places of work? Because there are union agreements for the distance in which people can walk to clock on and off. There is so much that goes into it, and it's so intricate that, at the moment between HS2 and Rex, there is, just to give a shout out, they are doing such a good job of making sure that they, aren't missing any opportunities and are trying to be as collaborative as possible so that we can get the most out of what we're doing at this station.
Ah, fantastic. That's good to hear. There'll be a lot of people very pleased to hear that. Yeah. So, Euston, crikey. That's all I have to say. Well, there's probably a lot more we can say about that. But we should, given that we are 36 minutes into an hour-long podcast, we've not even talked about Christmas yet. We've got the hat, so it's fine.
Counts?
The hats count. We're going to go into a question. Both of us, our faces have just gone bright orange because a big orange slide has appeared. And it says, why does the railway close at Christmas? Well, hopefully the next couple of slides will give us both a chance to sort of blab on a bit and explain this one. So why does the railway close at Christmas? Well, I put pictures up. The next picture it's a video, actually. It's a video looking south from Glasgow Central. And I thought this one explained, well, fundamentally the reason why the railways close at Christmas is because otherwise the trains run and we can't do anything while the trains are running. Particularly if you do things like it's quite nice. Quite like this video. This is half an hour, and it just shows how many trains are coming in and out of a very complicated web of tracks south of Glasgow Central. But you can't run trains like this if you've dug up the track. So here's another picture, a rather more serene image of one of the projects I worked on a while back. This wasn't at Christmas. This was in March, but you can see there's a hole where the track should be. You can't run trains if there's a hole. Yeah, there we are. Anyway, so Bonnie, your thoughts. Does this basically sum up why we do this sort of thing? I mean, you mentioned earlier some of the other things, but broadly, the reason we need to do stuff, the reason we close the railway at Christmas is because we need to do stuff to it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about when our railways were first built and everything else and all the infrastructure that goes with the railway, there is so much upkeep in order to keep our railways safe that you just can't get done any other time of the year. That's sort of like my first point. My second point is obviously looking at this video that you've got up at the moment where the track is actually off of the ballast and everything else. I mean, apart from the fact that you obviously wouldn't be able to run a train without any track, even if you're doing works that aren't as infrastructure heavy as such as taking the track off, it's just not worth doing it in an unsafe manner. If you've got people on the ground, which if you're working you would, I'm of the opinion that especially on a Christmas blockade, there isn't the drive in terms of passengers getting trains on Christmas Day to warrant it anymore. Like we discussed earlier, that it's just safer to do it.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it makes me nervous when, sort of back in the day I was in a live railway environment, and don't get me wrong, I've always followed process and I've always followed the method statements and I've always been completely safe. But that doesn't make it any less stressful and any less nerve-wracking to know that if you make a mistake at any time, you could die. Like, not to get too heavy, but that is really the crux of this.
Oh, yeah.
If you can take away that risk, you should. It's that sort of pyramid of risk in terms of, can you take the risk away? Okay, you can't take the risk away, but can you mitigate it with a process so that the person is away from the risk? If you can't mitigate that risk, then you've got PPE as your very last line of defence. And as great and as much as I love the high vis because they do wonders for my complexion, they're not going to save me from a train.
Yeah, so you're still going to get turned into ragu. Like ultimately definitely. It's one of those weird things because it's like, yes, I wouldn't be working on the rail. So most of the stuff that I've done that involves being next to trains is survey work, right? So when I'm out collecting information so that I know what the railway looks like, so I can muck around with it. And And unfortunately, surveys always get kicked to the bottom of the pile in terms of priority. So I'm often out working line blocks where you phone up the signaller says, "Yeah, you're between red signals, you're protected, on you go,"
Yeah.
and often that means that I'm working alongside an open railway. An adjacent line is still open, and even though
So
you're working safe, I wouldn't be working if I didn't feel safe. At the same time, there's a difference between knowing that you're working safe, having the confidence in the safe system work, and not still being conscious that 1 foot in the wrong direction means I'm on a live railway with trains going back and forth. So it's absolutely the safest thing is to just take that risk out of the equation altogether. And for major work, where you've got a lot of people and machines, that risk only increases because you've got more people bouncing around, you've got a more complicated site. So working with the adjacent railway open is just, you really want to avoid that for complicated works. Kind of like what's going on here. The other thing, of course, we mentioned physical holes in the railway and safety. The other thing, even if you're not actually mucking around with the infrastructure, the signallers and the signalling tester and commissioners, they need what they call wheels free for quite a long time, and then you can't achieve that when trains are running. So you have to close the railway to actually safely, so that the railway is safe for passengers and freight trains to run around. The signalling system obviously has to be tested and be confirmed as working, and in order to do that, you have to have wheels free for so many hours. You can't do that when you've got without a blockade. Anyway,
no.
so there, nice pictures of PEMs and LEMs whizzing back and forth and moving, switching, crossing units around. In any case, so that is one thing. Next thing is a picture of you looking like you're struggling in the snow. What the heck's going on, Bonnie?
So this is a Christmas that I worked down in the south for a contractor who I didn't check if I could tell this story, so they're
That'd be
going
fine.
to remain nameless.
Yeah.
So this was my second Christmas that I'd worked on the railway, and we were replacing and doing cable doubling, and well, it did not go as planned, should we say. Unfortunately, a labour agency fell through with all the labour, not all of, but part of the labour we ordered. What else happened? The van that we ordered in order to feed everybody, because obviously how is everybody going to get lunch on Christmas Day? They turned up 5 hours late. It was just one of those jobs where just everything was done right, but it still went wrong. And it got to the end of the shift, and my mum kept trying to video call me, and I just sent her this picture going, "I'll call you when I get to the hotel," because I was working really far away from my house at the time. And she went, "Don't worry, just go to sleep and ring me when you wake up."
Yeah.
And I was like, "How about in about a couple of years when I've recovered?"
Yeah. Oh goodness.
But yeah, I was absolutely freezing because I'm not, I'm a city girl by nature. I'm not outdoorsy. I was like, well, I've got a big coat. I'll be fine.
When you're standing around,
Freeman narrator voice. In fact, she was not fine. She
Yeah.
was freezing.
she was a giant icicle.
Exactly that.
Anyone who's stood outside in the cold, even in all of your warm layers, I'm generally quite a warm person, but even when I'm stood outside in all my layers, in fact, on that shift, when I was doing that video from the last slide, I was freezing. I was stood next to the generator trying to warm my fingers up, because when you're stood around for 4 or 5 hours plus in the middle of the night, which it was for me then, when your body's kind of expecting you to be in bed anyway, but anytime, just standing around watching things, making sure stuff's happening, you get cold. Even if you're kind of plodding around on track, you get cold.
You do. The problem is because you're not physically lifting and shifting, your body starts to get very confused, because obviously this picture is at the end of a 12-hour shift, and this is at maybe 7 in the morning, I think. And, unfortunately, when you're wearing cut 5 gloves, which was mandated by the client at the time, so cut 5 gloves are a type of cut resistant glove, obviously, but they have a metal meshing in them, which is a great idea, but they get really cold and then create very cold hands. So I know that a lot of safety contractors have started creating lined versions and things like that to make them a bit more user-friendly. So between the cut 5 gloves that were freezing cold, because they were basically like very fine chain link within rubber, my steel toe cap boots that I did not spend that much money on because I was very young and stupid, they were freezing cold. It was just not going well.
Yeah, covered in a lot of very cold metal with snow landing on your head.
Yeah, It was not, and it was one of those ones where I was like, if I wear my hard hat for another hour, I'm gonna throw it. I'm getting mad. So when I left the site and walked home, I took my hard hat off and put it in. I was like, I don't even care that it's snowing. I don't even care anymore. I just want this hard hat off.
The
'Cause,
shift from hell. It does happen, and they don't always all go like that. Invariably, things do go wrong. They don't all go like that, but when they do, good grief, they stick with you, right?
they do, and that's why I thought it was important to put this one in, because considering that I'm, year 7 into my career, I feel like I'm very, very lucky because apart from obviously this year in 2020, I've worked every single Christmas and every single Easter. Apart from this shift on the screen now, I've not really had that many go wrong, and I feel like sort of knocking
Yeah,
on wood there, but
be smug. You deserve to be smug.
but I feel very, very fortunate because I hear some horror stories on site, and I'm like, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't complain.
So there you are, covered in snow. Actually, looking remarkably kind of. You still look like you got your shit together actually in that picture, even though like. Yeah, like you could be like there could just be you just like running off into the distance with like just wailing your arms around. You kind of like, yeah. In any case, snowy, which is good. I'm glad you gave us a snowy picture for our topical episode. Oh right, okay. We're gonna do so. We're diving even deeper in to actually explain what a blockade is. We've both gone orange again. So
Who's first, you or I?
oh yeah, who's gonna go for it? Well, first of all, I'll put this picture up. So these are some images that I've ripped straight out of the Railway Group Standards, sort of the rule book actually, explaining some things. So, two things here. Both of these are possessions, so not technically neither of these are blockades. But oh wait, let me get my pen back. Where's the pen? Here we are. Let's do red. So on this one, we've already talked about adjacent line open. You can see this bit here in blue is this is the possession. So this is what the work will go on. Kind of there'll be work going on here, and we can do what we like here, as long as it's sufficiently protected, which it has been here. However, there's an adjacent line. The adjacent line is open, so this, as we've already said, isn't really suitable for a lot of the work the heavy work that we need to do on the railway. So then the next thing you can do is actually close the railway completely. So this here is a full line closure, full line kind of all line possession. Particularly this bit here, you can see this bit here, all line possession. But still, the thing that makes it then a blockade is basically kind of like this, except that you just close everything all closed off, and you just have everything closed off, and it generally has to be planned long in advance. Possessions are planned 12 weeks in advance, minimum, theoretically, although sometimes they can be a bit less than that. Correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, by the way, Bonnie. That's radio silence, so I'm happy with the radio silence so far.
I'll jump in when you're done.
Go for it. But then the block. Okay, so this is a kind of these are possessions. But what's the difference between a possession and a blockade then? How would you describe the difference?
So from my contractor side knowledge only, and this could be completely wrong, I was on the working knowledge that possessions were generally agreed amongst possession managers and possession planners, generally of sort of 52 weeks out, unless there's an emergency or unless there is a threat to the timetable. When I say threat to timetable, I don't mean in terms of like something terrible safety incident happening, but in terms of just an impact on the operational timetable. That's generally the rules I was given in terms of when it comes to asking for possessions, because obviously different clients have to budget in terms of rail replacement and things like that, and that's the reasons contractors are at least given when they're delivering sort of those works on those possessions that is 52 weeks out. I just wanted to add, because obviously you have a diverse set of viewership. Could you circle the bottom left paragraph for me? Possession of the down main line.
Oh yes, I can. Let me do precisely that. This bit here, possession of the down main line, detonator protection beyond 844, which is one of the numbered signals they've chosen here. Oh, it's just one of the symbol. There's a little symbol with the number 844. Detonator protection beyond 844 through crossing to detonator protection on the approach side of 845 points.
So where it says possession of the down main line, when you look at different track maps, diagrams, everything else, you'll see that everything's either called a down or an up. So an up is the direction of which you'd be travelling to London. So when you do possession planning and things like that, and you're looking at, plant movement for road rail vehicles when you're delivering materials, and you talk about the up and the down line, in terms of how you turn your vehicles around, where you're planting all of your different materials for the rest of that possession or blockade, you would do that on either the up or the down. The up goes to London and the down is travelling away from London. There are very, very, very few exceptions to the rule. There will be somebody out there, probably Simon Kendler, who will tell you that there's somewhere called the up that actually isn't.
There are a few around, yeah.
Yeah, there is like maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, but in the sort of general rule of thumb when you are planning a possession or a blockade is that you would use your time for the beginning of the possession for the up and down lines in order to put your materials and plant that you would need, so that you don't have to spend a lot of people labor and a lot of inefficient labor intensive hours getting plant and materials there that you don't need to use when you could use a road rail vehicle. It's a lot easier.
So generally, so possessions are generally the actual difference in terms of protection between a possession and a blockade are not too dissimilar. But generally, the difference is that a possession is not usually much more than a weekend or a long weekend.
Absolutely.
Whereas a blockade, so it's quite common that we'd have. So, for example, you regularly do works to do rota rules of the route works on weekday nights. That's very common. Small works, weekday nights, like Monday night through to Thursday night, very common. Another very common type of possession is where you do work, the railway, the last train runs on the Friday night, you get the railway on the Saturday, and you get it on the Sunday through to the morning and try and get the railway reopened by kind of prepped ready for Sunday, for the Monday morning sort of commuter trains. But if you've got a bank...
Contractors fear.
Yes, that first train.
It is so expensive.
Yes, and often there's like you're kind of bargaining with the ops team on the Monday morning, sort of saying, look, can you just squeeze the last one back by? We still need another 4 hours wheels free. Can you just it's like 1 a.m. and that the first train comes through at like 5:30 or something, and you're just like, oh, it's gonna be tight. Because we've got to get wheels free, and then we've got to get all the kit off, and so on. So that's always a bit scary. But a lot of work happens in weekends. So that's a lot of kind of things like junction remodeling. It's a very simple one, or junction renewals. Sorry, not remodeling. Junction renewals, where you're just sort of taking out a switch that needs renewing, putting a new one in, basically where the other old one was. That sort of thing you can do in a weekend. But where you've got a lot of digging, a lot of physical heavy works to do, you need longer than that. So a blockade is where you'll have perhaps a long weekend, like so Easter is an example of one where you've got kind of right the way through. You've got Good Friday right the way through to Tuesday, so you've got quite a lot of hours there. 54 hours plus, basically. I'd say 54 hours plus is where you're getting into blockade territory, and you can have longer blockades. So, for example, King's Cross remodeling is going to have several. Had some full blockades, and it'll have some partial blockades where the lines are closed for weeks at a time. So yeah, generally a blockade is just a long possession. I think that pretty much covers it. I'm gonna have specialists of who. In fact, I'm gonna have people shaking. I'm gonna have people shaking this thing at me, saying that I'm speaking rubbish. Let's go side by side.
There we go.
There it is. We've got our faces next to each other. There are. So all the nice pictures in here for everyone to know how to not get turned into pasta sauce on the railway. Also, I've got an old copy of the rulebook behind me as well.
When you say old copy, how old are we talking?
Not that old. It says rail track on it, so it's not actually that old. What's the year on it? 96.
Okay, I was 2 when that came out. Okay, that definitely counts as vintage.
Yeah. I've got some really old ones somewhere else on here, actually. Some like really knackered old bits and pieces in my various collections behind me. In any case, we must travel on, because 54 minutes have passed already and we're barely scratching the surface. In any case, they're blockades. I think we've explained that fine, haven't we? Yeah. We've gone through that. But again, yeah. So it's where you need really complicated work. This is a picture, I think, of. Is it the railway through? I think it's through Doomsgate, or it might be on the Manchester Victoria approaches. In any case, this is in Manchester, I think. And you can see I love this picture because it's so complicated. There's so much going on. you just couldn't achieve this work. So you've got road rail vehicles sort of here. You've got a ballast train here working its way through, kind of parked up. Another road railers here, more here. Lots of people working. You've got some S&C units sort of plonked up here. There's an enormous amount of work. There's new OLE masts that have been placed, new foundation. I think there's a pile of foundations somewhere. I can't find it. There's just so much going on. You just cannot achieve this sort of level of work in one weekend. You need a long time to prepare. To prepare the materials. You can see there's a load of geotextile here where they're kind of protecting, waterproofing the bridge, kind of this elevated bit of railway, and laying new ballast onto. Just so much work going on.
Absolutely. And I mean, even, obviously you do get passengers who are very inconvenienced. I mean, unfortunately, I don't drive, so I normally end up getting the bus replacement to the site that I'm working at, which is never very good if you're already in uniform with some disgruntled passengers. But, they say, well, why can't you do a line at the time, or why can't you just do it on nights? And, realistically, a lot of work probably could be done on nights. But we also have a duty to squeeze out sort of every penny that we're given by the government in terms of these renewals, enhancements and upgrades, that this is the most cost effective and efficient way to get this done. Absolutely. And if we want to make sure that, the railway does keep running and, keep trying to keep up with passenger demand in terms of numbers and in terms of, usage of later into the night. I mean, there are lots of calls for, 24-hour railway, not just on the tube at the weekends in London, but also across the UK for weekend 24 hours. If we want to get to a position where we're able to deliver that, then we have to do these sort of upgrades in blockades and possessions. There's just no other way to do it that would be as cost effective.
Yeah, I think people perhaps don't realise that if you're delivering work in rules of the route, so weekday evenings or even in successive weekends, you're talking about potentially 4 or 5 times longer to do the work in terms of people hours, but in terms of actual time, the work that you could do in between 2 weekends with a week might end up taking multiple years to deliver because of the complexity of not being able to bring kit into site. Like, you're talking about huge extensions of time, and all that extra time means more people having to be employed longer term, which means the project costs a lot more, which means the work ultimately, given the various sort of economic drivers or decisions, abolish the treasury, etc. Money, unfortunately, remains everything. And so if you're delivering less work for the same cash, that means that government is less interested in investing. So It's bad news all round, really. So we need to get into a place, and we'll talk about this at the end, we need to get into a place where, as a society, we're a bit more comfortable with closing the railway a bit like this. But also, that's on the railway a bit to communicate better. But we'll talk about that later. In any case, here's some pictures of railways with holes in them.
There's also the fact that, not even just at the... Wow.
Yeah, there's sorry, I've distracted you with a picture of this is near my where I grew up. This is you can tell by the cheap granite facing they've used on the bridge. This is the redoubling of the Aberdeen Inverurie line, and you can see what they've done here is make a bridge do folly down because they're going to put a new one in because it was single track and is going to be double track.
That's the technical term, is it? Make the bridge do the folly down.
Precisely, yes. You can see they've put some nice netting over the hedge adjacent to what's probably a pretty mundane hedge next to the railway there. They've put some nice protective netting on it. That's nice, isn't it?
So the reason they do that is to shield sort of birds' nests and things like that, to make sure that they don't leave the nest, so that they do come back.
Yeah, there you go. See, that is why we have clever people joining us on RailNatter, folks. In any case, sorry, I distracted you from making a valid point.
The other one was just about, efficiency in terms of the blockades and possessions. There's also, there is already a really big skills shortage and skills gap within the railway.
Yep.
It's all, planning possessions and blockades, especially at Christmas. It is harder and harder every year, and it is more expensive every year to find the labour that you need and to find people, not just people who fill the roles, but good people for the roles who are skilled and talented at their job. And if we did this all on nights and stretched it all out far longer than it needed to, it just wouldn't work because of the skills shortage and gap that already exists.
Yeah, and it's not. Frankly, it's not. When you want when you don't want all of your workforce to be working horrible antisocial hours, it's not unreasonable for people to expect to, yes, always there's going to be maintenance and renewals work in evenings. There's no avoiding that because we're always on the back foot trying to keep up with the backlog of keeping the railway intact. But when you, exactly as you say, people deserve to have a decent standard of living, and if the only work that's available to them is nights, weekends, that's not, it puts a stress on mental health, on families, on people, people's own social lives. If they, if they're single, if it wrecks their social life, they don't have any nights themselves. It's just, yeah. So there are lots of good reasons for doing more work in more conventional hours. Not least that it's less antisocial for the staff doing the work, and also it means that, yeah, as you say, we can deliver more, we get more bang for our buck, we can deliver more quickly, and we're in a race against time to deliver more capacity on this railway network. COVID is going to be a blip in terms of rail numbers. Everything will be back to normal within a couple of years, and the overriding problem is that we still have 90% of people and things moving around by road. Rail needs to double its capacity by the middle of the century, and we're not going to do that if we don't make best use of the limited human resources we have.
Absolutely, and with COVID numbers eventually coming back to normal once everything, the vaccine, everything else is out, you'll also have an influx, I think, of more commuter passengers, because I don't know about you, but certainly in a lot of my social circles, people have moved back out to the countryside, back away from their jobs, either back home to their parents to save money for a deposit to try and get on the market, or they've actually sold their existing property in Central and tried to move further out in order to get a bit more bang for their buck. So then I think there is going to be an increased passenger demand that people aren't necessarily expecting, of people who've moved out of sort of cities to the countryside for a better standard of living.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, because we even before COVID, there was an increasing trend of people working a bit more flexibly, doing more work, spending fewer hours, not necessarily the traditional commute, but actually as a result, travelling more by rail, enabling them to actually use rail more than they would if they were just commuting, because they can then travel maybe 2 or 3 days a week on a longer commute. So it's, yeah, the patterns have been, the traditional commute has been in decline for a long time. And actually, more and more, we're seeing this more flexible and it's a good thing, because if it levels our peaks out a little bit, actually it allows us to use the railway in a bit more of a clever way. So yeah, that's definitely true. The trends of travel patterns existed before COVID and will continue to COVID perhaps has cemented some of them a bit more quickly, which is maybe helpful from a long-term planning perspective. Anyway, right, I'm going to wiggle my hands around. I'm going to press this button here, and we're going to go to the next slide. What sort of works are going on? Oh, this is where so we're 1 hour and... Actually, I have no idea how many hours we're in, because we'll have paused it where we broke. However, we're an hour in already, and we're only just talking about what kind of works are going on. Let's whiz on to the next picture. So I've only just put up a few pictures, and actually there's an indescribably large number of different sorts of works that go on at Christmas. And I'm sure you've got different... I mean, how many years? You've 6 Christmases you'll have worked now, is it? 6?
Yeah, 6.
So you'll have done all sorts of different things.
Yeah, so we did sort of cable doubling for Redacted.
Yeah.
I did, from Tunbridge to Hastings, power upgrade and feeder upgrade, plus a couple of substations here and there. Tunnelling repair works, because the tunnels were built so long ago that there was bricks falling down where they were just so wet and so horrible and old. So obviously, you often get bricks coming down onto the trains, not in a safety critical issue at all, because, when I say they'd come down, they'd fall about a foot and then just get knocked off into the cess.
Yeah,
the cess is, oh God.
This bit over here. The cess. Actually, that's not. I'm wrong, because it's not. This is actually a picture from the middle of the 10-foot. But basically, if you've got 2 tracks, I'm going to draw it now. Imagine you've got your traditional 2 tracks. Here we are. 2 tracks. I'm going to draw sleepers as well. This is my absolute best. Ella, who's one of the people on the Discord server, she'll be screaming at me saying, "Get a Wacom," which is a thing that allows you to draw better. I'm just using my shonky mouse, which is actually, my mouse it's getting really bad. There are some tracks.
A sponsor to buy you one of those.
I've got Patreon supporters who are just going to be shaking their head like, why? Come on. This bit here is the 6-foot. These bits here are the 4-foots. And these bits here are called the cess, because in yon olden days, and indeed as much as we possibly can these days as well, all the water and poop would flow into that bit where you'd have a drain or just a bit of a channel. And so it was called the cess, as in a cesspit, and that's why it's called the cess. But it's the bits either side of the railway, basically. So this is the 6-foot.
succinct, better explanation than I was about to give. Thank
For
you.
for
So obviously the bricks would fall into the cess and things like that. So there wouldn't be any sort of safety critical issues with that. But it was also about the fact that, it's important to maintain those tunnels and bridges as assets. So that was a lot of the work that happened over Christmas that I've done.
Yeah, yeah. It's so similar. So I've got a few. I don't think I've got any particular order of pictures here actually. So this one is a picture of you've got the tilting. Oh, press the button. Here's the tilting. I should have keep my pen up actually. So this one is judging by the OLE mast here, it looks like we're on the Great Western. And this is some the tilting S&C wagons to put switches and crossings on to basically remodel a railway junction. You've got some nice new G44 and fast clip sleepers here. They're lovely. Some nice new track. So they're putting in the new. So junction remodeling is quite a common one. That's one that I've been involved with a bit. Christmas works. The next one. Oh, now okay. I said we're going to pretend that we haven't had this conversation yet. Tell me, what do you recognise this bridge, Bonnie?
I do recognise this bridge. What a coincidence. So before I moved to East London, this bridge is around the corner from my old flat in, I was in Sanderstead at the time. It's Purley, isn't it? Or
Yeah,
Purley
this is
Oaks.
Pearly. And yeah, this is such a common. So the Christmas works that I've spent a lot of the time doing stuff recently. Not actually this one. None of the pictures that I've showed here are actually of sites that I've worked on. But this is very common sort of work that I do, particularly in and around London. Actually, lots of bridges where you aren't replacing the whole bridge because there are multiple spans of different ages. But here we've got a nice brick arch. Fairly flat elliptical brick arch span. We've ripped out one of the bridges here, and you can actually see up. I'm going to get rid of our faces briefly. There's a troughing route suspended up here with all the cables and things. That's been suspended by a kind of a scaffold structure that you can see one of the legs of on the other side of the image. So that's holding all the services up in the air, the utilities up in the air. Actually, these are the railway utilities, but there might well be some like Vodafone fibre optic cables or something too. Let's put our faces back. So that's hanging up in the air. Also, these chaps are rather unnervingly standing on top of the arch as if it's fine. But actually, it probably is fine because the arch is nice and strong. But it always looks weird.
I was going to say they are wearing harnesses as well.
They are,
can't
yeah.
see the chaps on the left, but the one on the right's got a harness on, so they'll all be harness trained and have harness tickets, which are difficult tickets to get in conjunction with railway tickets. Just for some reason, statistically, it is, and that we go back to that labour shortage again. Depending on the type of work you've got, finding someone with enough tickets to tick all the boxes for what you actually need on that shift is so challenging.
I mean,
it's so annoying.
So much people really don't appreciate how skilled a job doing physical work on the railways is. It's not just the case that you get any old mug off who can hold a shovel. No. People who are working on the railways have a huge range of different skill sets, different overlapping sort of, well, as we call them, tickets, craning tickets, or road rail operators, or people who are capable of doing hot work or suspended work, all these different things, huge amounts of complicated work. In any case, here they are all doing magical things, digging out the ground above this arch. But probably what's going to happen is we're going to put some form of flat deck underbridge here. So the underbridge, because the deck is under the railway. So there'll be a flat deck thing go here, or possibly it might be a con arch. Actually, I don't know. I don't exactly know what this bridge is. You can probably go on Street View and see exactly what it is now. In any case, that looks quite. I think this is actually an old brick arch bridge that's had two flanking flat decks next to it. If I know the site. So, although actually you do know it because you were there.
With lorries going through it.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd often get on the local Facebook pages that lorries had gotten themselves wedged into there because they can get under the first half, but because of the gradient of the road changes, they get stuck. Oh goodness.
Yeah, so actually, this is one of those situations where it really isn't ideal that you've got this combination. Anyway, that's a whole. I tell you what, the episode where Sir Peter Hendy joins us for a rail matter will be one about bridge strikes. So that'll be quite fun. Sir Peter Hendy, if you're watching, which apparently maybe you do. I was informed and then broke into a cold sweat that basically the ultimate boss of the railways. Sorry, Andrew Haynes, but it's Sir Peter Hendy. Let's face it. I'm not allowed to say. Oh, I'm getting told off. People are shouting in my. Oh, I've got someone in my ear. The lawyers are telling me to stop saying things. Okay, yeah, fine. In any case, that'd be a fun one, Sir Peter Hendy. It'd be a pleasure to have you on the show. Oh goodness. In any case, so that's some other work, replacing bridges. That it's all very complicated, and all the other good thing about doing this at Christmas is actually that the roads are a bit quieter as well, so we don't disturb too many people when we're mucking around with roads and highways as well as the railways. Next picture is in a station. It's another thing. Stations are very busy, apart from at Christmas, in theory. So this is a chance where we can rip things up. This looks like... What's that roof? Is this Paddington, actually? Is it? Is it? Oh, I can't quite tell. Or maybe it isn't. It's got a nice arched roof over here. This bit over here that's just underneath our heads. It's got kind of a nice station shed. I don't know what this work is. TXM
It's terrible because you and I are so different. You're looking at like the infrastructure, whereas I'm looking at the logos, thinking, who do I know that works there? What job were they on? And that's how I sort of go the sort of diagram in my mind of who do I know that works where, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I managed to find quite a few Carillion pictures. In fact, the videos from earlier were of Carillion staff. R.I.P. Should take our hats off and hold them on our chest for Carillion. Rip in peace, Carillion. I know, right? Sorry, Carillion. Yeah. Anyway, right. So, yeah, all this sort of stuff. Stuff that involves mucking around with the railway that would just generally be a pain. Doing this work while the station is open is very difficult because you have to close a platform and that disrupts a lot of people and makes timetabling difficult. And
there's always somebody drunk who's convinced they're going to come and do the work with you.
Oh, no. Oh,
the amount of drunk people I've had to remove and had removed from stations during possessions is a nightmare. And it doesn't matter how many security staff you hire, there will always be one who gets through when they've all been kicked out of the clubs on a Saturday or Friday night who just thinks that they're Bob the Builder.
Oh, crikey. Thanks, Bob the Builder. Anyway, so I mean, just you name it, we're doing it. My first Christmas work that I was involved with was the long timber renewals on the King Edward Bridge just south of Newcastle.
Right.
That was some interesting work. And obviously, again, long timbers are kind of long bits of wood that sit rather than sleeper, so they sit under the rail like that, rather than these sleepers, which you can see, which are doing this under the track. Long timbers do that, and so when you replace them, it's quite complicated work, particularly when it's on a bridge over the Tyne. Anyway, so yeah, similarly, I've done all sorts of bits of work, but as we're about to talk about in the next question, which is all Xmas work site-based? Well, it is for some people, but not necessarily, because I'm going to put a Gantt chart up next. Here we are. This is an Excel spreadsheet, and I think this is actually... I don't think anyone's going to be angry if I put this up. Let's see, what have we got? No, we won't, because this has happened, and I don't think there's anything particularly telling what this work is to anyone. But this was the...
Forgiveness rather than permission, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly, it's fine. The work's passed. I bet this Excel spreadsheet's been accidentally deleted and lost from a system anyway somewhere, so... no, I jest, of course. This will be the Wessex Alliance, so it would have been... One Team Wessex, which is... Oh my goodness, if I've forgotten our contractor's name, that would be... that's so bad. I've just had a complete mind blank. It's our client that we work so closely together with, and yet I've had a total mind blank. It's because we're such a close team that I've forgotten their name, because we are just One Team Wessex. That's
exactly.
it.
That's what it's all about, the collaboration.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to get sacked if I don't immediately Google this right now. Good grip. 1, 2...
While Googling that, I will talk about the works that I've done not necessarily on site during Christmas.
Oh yeah, do that while I Google Osborne's.
So
I'm saved.
one of the possessions that I did do over Christmas, I was based on site during the possession, but I was actually in just a grotty porter cabin with a dongle for the Wi-Fi. And then I was ringing round all of the other sites and doing the reporting for each of the possessions, not just for my job, but also for about 8 other jobs across the country for a contractor called Redacted, because I forgot to ask them if they minded me talking about them. So that's, there are a lot of different jobs. You can get, for example, site access controllers who are just outside of the site boundary. And one of their jobs is to essentially check everybody's ID, sign everybody in. So obviously Network Rail were using the Sentinel system. The construction industry uses CSCS cards. And part of that is to make sure that, for example, if a person who does work on site has failed the drug test, they are no longer welcome on site and they have their tickets removed from them. And it's to make sure that you can't just chop and change between, for example, Network Rail and London Underground, so that making sure that if you unfortunately, if you have a drug problem, it's not safe for you to be on the railway and you won't be allowed back. I believe it's 5 years, although that might have gone up to 7. I can't quite remember. So, you've got site access controllers who sign everybody in. They make sure the labour's there so that you're not overpaying for labour who hasn't turned up. Because quite often on Christmas, it's a bad practice, but sometimes, especially with private contractors and things like that, they will ring up different operatives who have a certain set of tickets that are quite hard to get hold of and say, well, how much are they paying you? I'll pay you slightly more. at the very last minute, and sometimes you just lose people to that. So those site access controllers are essential from a commercial perspective in terms of who you're paying for what, but also, if there's an incident on site and you have to evacuate, that is the up-to-date on the pulse register
List
for
of
making
who's
sure that nobody's lost. So it's really important, that job.
It's a huge amount of so this as a design engineer, this is the sort of thing that I'm seeing when I've got one or more sites. I'm getting the updates through on this. Actually, this isn't a Gantt chart really. It sort of is, but it's basically just a spreadsheet showing one column with the activity, the planned and the actual time that activity should finish. Actually, you can see, fair play to Osborne. This was a site that was going very, very well. We had a couple of blips with putting the third rail back in, and some challenges with getting the welding done on time. But generally, use flash butt welds, everyone, and then you wouldn't have that problem. Generally, we were having it's a pretty good site. This was replacing, just as I described earlier, replacing a bridge deck. Upper, wait a minute, this is UKL, I think. So this is Upper Kennington Lane, I think. So bridge work's going on there near Vauxhall, next to Vauxhall Station. So quite complicated because the bridge was kind of underneath the platform. So you've kind of got all the platform to deal with and all the sort of very fiddly site. But really interesting. And so you're following this. And essentially, as a designer, I'm sat waiting in case there's some issue where perhaps we've not picked something up in survey quite right, or maybe there's been a change since we did the survey or perhaps there's no problem with the survey, but there's just something isn't quite fitting for whatever reason. The designer, the contractors, the installation team like to have the designers on hand to they can phone up, ask us a question. We'll use our expertise in our design. We also know our design better than anyone else. So if there's something that we've not actually communicated very well in our drawings for whatever reason, we can explain it a bit more in detail. So we're just there to help as best we can. And so when was this? This was Christmas 18, so 2 years ago. So I was on. That was last. That was the last time I was on call. I wasn't on call last year, so that was the last time I was on call there to help out. So it's always you feel like you're part of the team. It's a bit sad that I can't imbibe because obviously I have to be completely sober for the hours that I'm on call. But
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good experience. You feel like you're supported. Sometimes designers can be a bit distant from the actual work that's going. Not always, and it's getting better, but there's always the risk that designers can be a bit distant. So it's nice for us to get stuck in and support the teams actually out there doing the work.
Yeah, and from the other side of that, being able to ring up a designer when you've discovered something that wasn't on any of the surveys, anything else, and go, look, this is in the way. For example, when you're laying a troughing route, I need to dogleg it around. I know that the cable has enough bend radius in it, but, are you seeing any problems? And I'll mark up the drawing with some red lines now. Just having that extra layer of protection because, you're out there, you're cold, you're 9 hours into a 12-hour shift. It's about having that additional layer of protection, like everything with the railway. It's belt and braces, and
Absolutely.
I think it is really good that design engineers are coming into the fold more with that.
Yeah, definitely, and we frankly we enjoy being there to help. If our design, our life is easier generally because our as-built drawings are easier to create when we can help and understand and inform the contractor, the installation team. If there are challenges, we as a designer, certainly all the designers I know in our team. Particularly on this contract, so One Team Wessex is one of the big multi-asset framework contracts where there's a contractor and then lots of designers supporting, and we have a very close working relationship. I'm pleased to say, and it's how it works best on the railway flank, frankly, when everyone's kind of working closely together and aiming in the same direction. And we know that when we're working closely with the installation team and supporting them basically the railway gets put together better. And everyone's happy at the end, and essentially, it's easy. You're more likely to be able to hand the site back in the finished state exactly as the client wants, which makes everyone happy. So that's one example. I'm sure again, lots of other people working, kind of delivering work with lots of different sorts of roles. As you talk, staff coordination and all sorts of different things, making sure it gets delivered. But conscious of time, you'll have to use your imagination to think of those. Unless there's anything else you want to say on this slide, Bonnie.
No, apart from the fact that obviously, if anyone who isn't in the railway but is listening is considering a career in the railway, I would definitely put that at the top of your list because there is so much variation that you could have. It's not just, you're not just there shoveling big rocks of ballast and that's it, and you're not just there filling in spreadsheets. There is absolutely everything in between those.
So true. Yeah, very, very good point. And we talked about the skills gap. We had a young rail during Rail Week. We had a YRP We had a lovely YRP episode where we were talking about the skills gap. We were talking about the skills gap and why we have challenges. That was a fun episode. We had Harriet Glenn had joined us to talk about the skills gap. It was a good episode, that one. Right, we're getting there. The last question. Our faces have both gone orange because we've got another chapter slide. Do the Christmas blockades give the railway enough time?
I think it depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to put this. In fact, I'll get both of our picked faces up for this one. It does depend on the perspective, doesn't it? Because Easter and Christmas are invariably we're waiting for those blockades to come around, right? So, like, if something happens that if there's some critical problem that means there's too much wind for a lift, or it means that we have to delay either to Easter or more likely to the one year later. And frankly, that means delays and long delays, which means increased costs, but also it just means, frankly, that we're not doing the work the railway needs in a timely fashion. So more flexibility for blockades to happen at other times of year, I think, is a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the jobs that I worked for that same contractor, Redacted, one of the tracks that we were on was a single line track, and it had a bridge that only had 15 mil of clearance on when we were putting a transformer through on the bogie to take it all the way through. And that was on one of the tunnels we were also consistently doing brickwork repairing because they were falling down so much. We had this lovely, shiny, brand new transformer on a single track tunnel with only 15 mil of clearance. Or we could have, chosen a Russian Mark Chinook to fly it in because that was the only type of helicopter strong enough to lift it in. But then you have the risk of the time of year because it's winter. So then, it's just an impossible choice that if we miss it, it will go out to either the next Christmas or, because there are so many works already planned in already with Network Rail, likely the Christmas after, potentially.
Yeah, quite often the Christmas, because for a lot of critical resources, they're booked 2 or even 3 years in advance now. Things like the Kirovs, the big cranes that can operate on the railway, they're booked, not just 1 or 2, but 3 years in advance. This is how critical.
I have a funny story about a Kirov if you want.
Oh, go on, tell us about your disaster Kirov. What happened?
I accidentally broke a car park with a Kirov crane. So, yeah. Our supplier at the time, who I will not name because, it was a genuine accident and it feels unfair to bash them, they delivered the Kirov 4 days early, and the yard that we had that was able to take the weight of that Kirov crane was full of materials that were going out on nights in preparation for this possession. So the operator of the Kirov crane was going, I believe, back to Wessex where he lived. I didn't have another operator. And he went, we can take it back with us to Wessex, but you're not going to get it back. And I thought, well, oh my God, my boss is on holiday, my boss's boss is on holiday, ready for this coming possession this weekend. I'm going to have to make a decision. So I got him to park it in the local station's car park, and I just stuck like 16 parking tickets to it. And I thought, well, at least I haven't let it go anywhere. I mean, I would like to point out I was very junior in my career. I was just 20.
Yeah, but that's like using some common sense. I don't know, it's fine.
Well, I knew if we couldn't get it this weekend, one, the possession would be pushed out by about 12 months. But I also know that Kirovs are in such short supply. It was another 18 months before we had a free booking for one again. So I thought, right, we've got to keep it, even if I can't fit it in the yard. And then I went back into the office feeling content that I had put out this fire. Then about 6 hours later, when I left the office to go home, I'd noticed that it had sunk a bit by about 5 inches.
Oh.
So I've rung all of our design engineers, our civil engineers, going, I've really made a big mistake. I need your help right now. Go back to the office. Come to the office.
Oh my goodness.
I was really popular. And they went, well, I mean, if it's only sunk this much by now, it's probably not going to go anymore. It's probably going to be fine, but who owns the car park? And I was like, well, I'm assuming the operator owns and runs the car park. And it turns out it was owned by a lord who I will not name as well, whose secretary contacted the company directly instead of coming to our site office that was also in the car park. And long story short, we relayed their car park at our own cost and bought lots of apology presents, and did some works to said lord's estate about 20 miles away from that car park. Who shall remain unnamed, but it's definitely one of the biggest mistakes that I've ever made in my
See,
career.
I still don't think that's a mistake.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a good line to say I broke a car park with a crane.
I don't think that's a mistake. You'd have probably the cost of relaying the car park was less than the cost of binning the possession. So actually, it doesn't sound like a mistake at all.
During my argument with my boss about it at the time, that losing the Kirov crane booking that we'd already paid for, losing the possession, all the labour, abortive costs, and everything else, that was like 288 grand, and that was just like a finger in the air. These are the costs I'm thinking about, let alone the rebooking of the possession of the line and everything else. So it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Rebuild a car park. Everyone's happy. Everyone's got a nice new shiny thing at the end of it. New shiny bit of railway, new shiny car park, new shiny fence on some lord's estate. Everyone's winning.
Exactly.
But again, this kind of comes back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier with pressure of possessions and how much the pressure of the pressure is only increased by the fact that if you've got limited, the ability to make decisions about assets, about resources, about staffing, the pressure is on, and mistakes are made when there's too much pressure. And so having the ability to book blockades in different times of the year, we've already talked about that improving staff welfare, but also the availability of staff in the first place, the ability to recruit staff. It's just a winner. And so I'm going to go back to guest face. Here we are. We're back in the corner. This is a picture of, this is a nice, sorry, new civil engineer, I've nicked your sketch because it's quite a nice image showing the Warrington dive underworks. So this is a curved box launch that's going to be happening, I don't know, either this Christmas or imminently. In any case,
Fancy.
Say again.
It's very fancy.
It's very snazzy. Yeah. So I've been when I was taking the train north and south on the East Coast Main Line quite a lot before the plague times. I was videoing as much as I could out of the window, showing all this work starting to appear and the cutting being dug, the trench being dug, and the piles driven, and all this stuff. It's fascinating work. And it's coming to a head. The big stuff is going to start happening soon. And I've got a sketch of what. So you can see this launched box, kind of curved box tunnel structure that's going to be curved and guided around underneath the existing railway, which is very cool. But also it's got all sorts of hydraulic jacks and board piling to make sure, and there's like a board tunnel with guide tracks to jack and guide this thing. Fascinating amount of work. This sort of work is only going to increase in frequency as we upgrade the capacity of our railway network. More of this work, more disruptive, massive, heavy engineering work. And in order to achieve this, we need to have more flexibility in terms of blockades. So the reason I put this picture up, and indeed the next one, which is of, if I press this button and press this button, you can actually see the physical thing. So here's that curved box. Here's the curved box here, and you can see this is the kind of the pile cutting where it's going to be driven and pushed round underneath the existing East Coast Main Line. Very, very, very cool engineering. In any case, more of this is going to be happening around the country, and we simply cannot deliver those works without being more flexible in the times when we occupy the railway. So from my perspective, I think it's a good thing that ultimately passengers and freight operators get a better railway more quickly if they are happy with more blockades throughout the year. But also the railway needs to get better at communicating what these look like to the wider world as well. I think there's always more that we can do. We've got a lot better in recent years, but I don't know what you think, Bonnie, but I think there's always more we can do to communicate to our stakeholders about what they're coming up.
Definitely, and I think that the railway should also invite people in more. I think that in general we should be doing more tours for secondary school age children in the local area. So for example, when I was working for the Tunbridge to Hastings power upgrade, and a lot of those sites around Tunbridge Wells in Kent, the ideal stakeholder management tool would have been to invite the local children to come and have a look at this site in a safe planned manner, obviously not inducing child labour or anything like that, but
give them a shovel.
Exactly, they'll be fine. But it gives that community spirit to the job, and it stops a lot of people going, why have they got to do it in my back garden, being a bit of a NIMBY, but understanding that it's actually an improvement for their community and it affects them directly in a positive way. But it also would show a lot of those children the different careers they could have in railway. And I think it would be a better way of making people understand what's happening at the end of their back garden where that railway line is. Oh, it's just work going on. Oh, actually, what they're doing is, and if you've got a family of sitting around having dinner, if their children have been on site and are able to tell them what's going on, I think that's quite a nice way to sort of bridge that gap, as it were.
Absolutely. I couldn't possibly think of a better way to ingratiate us as a railway. I couldn't think of a better way to ingratiate our industry with our stakeholders than getting the kids involved, who then convince their parents and grandparents. Absolutely. I don't think I can think of a better way to close out, really. Other than this picture of a snowy Class 158 in the north. I suppose that's all right. But there's not really much to say about other than Christmassy
cute
stuff. It's quite nice, isn't it?
On mentioning the kids and bringing children into railway, can I just do a cheeky plug for YRP?
Oh, I've got yes, but we've got adverts in a minute, and I've got you a special slide which you can do it to. So you're all set. We'll do the special slide. In fact, which we will. So I'll leave this picture up for a few more seconds. It's nice, snowy, Class 158. Right, okay, that's enough. So everyone, I'm going to press this button. So this is available in audio form, and yes, we have. So go and listen to it. I think this will be getting uploaded by. Actually, Ella's uploading this one, not Giel. Thanks, Ella, because Giel's on holiday, rightly so. So we're available on all good podcasting platforms. Next slide is Patreon. So yes, do support me on Patreon to make more of this happen. Future episodes and themes you get to pick, and you get sneak peeks, and I ask you inane questions. Come and get involved in the Discord chat. It's a bit like the YouTube chat, but it's 24/7. So if that's right up your street, then I'm impressed. And also you can go to it at garethdennis.co.uk/discord. Or if you don't fancy any of that sort of commitment, but you do want to support me on this, then paypal.me/GarethDennis. That's my plug. Now it's time for Bonnie's plug. The YRP. Tell us. In fact, I'm going to get your face back. So we're going to go back to guest face again. So you can tell us about the YRP.
Thank you. So YRP is a not-for-profit organisation that focuses on promoting, developing and inspiring the railway to young people. At the moment, I'm their national vice chairwoman, so you have different positions within YRP that you can be elected to, or you can volunteer as sort of regular. And there's 8 regions, so obviously we've got Scotland, North East, North West, East Mids, West Mids, Wales, Western, London and South East. We're doing a Wales relaunch in the new year, which we'd love to see some people come to if you're from that Welsh region. We'd love to come and get involved. We've got a website, and if you want to come and sign up, we're on LinkedIn, Twitter, we're on everything. I'm doing a terrible plug for this.
Hey, it's great. Hey, the improvised plugs are the best plugs.
We do heritage work, so we've got Matthew Teller, who's our heritage manager at the moment, and he does a lot of fantastic work. We've got Interrail programme, which features railway to younger children and to school-age children and promoting it in an educational sense. We've got Rail Week, which obviously you mentioned earlier, which is sort of an industry-wide pulling together in terms of promoting Rail Week. There is so much that we do as an organisation, all based off of volunteering. We have our annual dinner, which at the moment is in April, but obviously due to the coronavirus, I suspect that will get pushed back. It's impossible to say right now. But do come and have a chat and come and get involved in our various different committees all over the UK, and we'd love to see some more people.
Absolutely, go and get stuck into the YRP. Bonnie, let's get. Oh, actually, before I say my thank yous, I have personal plugging as well. So the next 2 episodes have I actually got one? Let me just check. Have I actually got? I'm going to go side by side. I'm going to be really clever here. Oh no, I've only advertised it just so. So the next episode, the next Christmas episode, is Snow versus Railways, which is going to be a fun little whiz through talking about how snow and railways have battled each other throughout history, and there'll be some gratuitous pictures of snow plows. So that should be fun. For anyone who likes snow plows, join us for episode 42. And then episode 43, which I don't have a picture of, but which I'll probably add in post, so I'll pretend that there's a picture of it. In fact, I'll turn our faces off briefly, just so that I can edit it in and it'll be totally seamless. The next episode is episode 43. Is we're going to talk about the US railways and how the US railroads are good, actually, with Justin Rosniak, aka Do Not Eat, off of Well There's Your Problem podcast, who's a veritable podcasting celebrity. So that's very exciting. We've got quite the Christmas lineup. Bonnie, you've started off our celebrity triple. Alex, well, less of a celebrity, you won't mind me saying it. And then Justin Rosniak coming in. So it's all good stuff. It's exciting. It's an exciting Christmas. I can now do this button and pretend that was slickly operated and everyone's it's a pro move. Frankly, I'm very good at this. It's not totally unprofessional and shonky. Bonnie, that's been brilliant. I've had so much fun.
Pterodactyl.
Yeah, that's it. The pterodactyls. Remember the pterodactyls, everyone. What? Yeah. What? That's great. Thanks for that.
Oh, hang on.
There we are. We've respectively finished. Yeah, yeah. That means we can finish. That's done. I'm going to knock the mic over and walk off. That was delicious. I needed that Bailey's, actually. That's good. Bonnie, thanks so much for joining us on this Christmas Eve.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I had a lovely time.
It's been a pleasure. I will I will stay on the line because I'll say a thanks after. But for everyone else who's been watching this sort of live, have a nice Christmas and enjoy your respective holidays. And if you aren't a Christmas fan but you just enjoy the holiday season, which is basically me actually, have a nice rest of your holiday season. And I'll see you for the next one in a week, or I won't because it's not live. It's a pre-record, but I might join in the chat and say hello anyway. But from me and Bonnie, it only remains to say cheerio, cheerio, cheerio.